We're all choosing each other here on a Saturday afternoon here. Welcome back to the Jake Feinberg Show here on Power Talk. This is hour number 2 of my program. And without further ado, I want to bring back a cat who's still doing it in many different forms and, just continues to push forward, overcome, and keep moving. And it's such a great honor to have him back on the program. David T. Walker, welcome back to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Yes, thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Great to talk to you. I wanted to ask you, I remember speaking with Ed Green a while back, and he said that he knew Barry White when he was kind of on the streets in a almost, I think, homeless, playing conga drums, and Gene Page was out there. I just wanted to know when you first connected with Barry White.
Well, let's see. I can't recall that first album, but I never met him before we worked together on. I think it actually was probably somebody he was producing, a singer. I don't recall who it was, but I didn't know him. I know that I don't think he was homeless, but he was certainly not doing as well as he eventually did. But he was always active in music. I remember he was in a group called Lowriders. These were some people that had these fancy cars that were dropped, as they used to call it, lowered. They would bounce up and down and
yeah. Shocks, a lot of shocks on those cars.
Yeah, that's right. He was around that situation, but I didn't know him then. I met him the first time I met him was at a studio, actually, Art LeBeau. I don't know if you remember that name or ever heard that name.
No, I have not heard that
But
name.
he was a very famous DJ here on the West Coast. And he also had a recording studio on Sunset Boulevard, upstairs, somewhere around Highland. Yeah, on Sunset. And so that's where I first met him.
What was it? He obviously grew. What was the intangible thing about Barry that made him? He sold millions of albums. You're always that rhythm section with Wilton
right.
and Ed, so he was struggling at one point, but then ultimately he just kind of. What was it that made it? What were the intangible things that, in your mind, that made him a great leader on the bandstand?
Well, I never worked with him live, so I wouldn't call it a bandstand. Well, I guess you could do that. Yeah, sure. I never, only in recording studios is where I spent time with him. But he found a niche. Certainly he did that, and he kept it simple, his music or his recordings. I mean, I think it was the simplicity of it, and he knew the people, right people to call to keep it like that, like Wilton Felder, Ed Green, just straight-ahead people. They just played what was necessary, as well as I did.
As well as David T. Walker. I mean, what can you? I mean,
Right.
I don't find it to be sparse. I mean, were there? Because Gene Page was he writing out the charts? I mean, was there a lot of sight reading?
Gene Page was always there. He did the rhythm section, but there were only chord changes and maybe some kind of rhythm for Ed or a line for Wilton Felder on the bass. Other than that, no. It was just chord charts for the most part. And, of course, most of us know what to do with that. When we hear like he would maybe, and he played piano in the beginning on most of the time when we recorded. Barry played a little piano. I mean, he wasn't a real piano player, but all the songs that he wrote, no one could play them better.
That's amazing. So he was just playing. He was just comping on the piano, or were you actually playing solos as well?
Yeah, just play no solos. As maybe some writers that use the piano to write songs.
Of course.
It's like that. That's what it was.
I want to read you this.
Well, some people use guitar to write songs. For example, they're not guitar players, but they can use that particular instrument, whatever it is, to write.
You're right though. Most cats that are writing songs are composing them on the piano. You're 100% right about it. I wanted to read you this quote. I did my third interview with Chuck Rainey this week, a couple days ago, or 2 days ago. He said,
okay.
But this was from my second interview with him. He said, I do this trip with Marlena Shaw every summer, and this is going back to about 2013. I realize she's retired from doing this gig now, but he said,
last year was her last year, yes.
He said, I do this trip with Marlena Shaw every year in Japan, every summer to Japan. This year will be our fifth one. The band is a great band. It consists of Harvey Mason on drums, David T. Walker on guitar, Larry Nash on keyboards, and we were the rhythm section on her album, Who Is This Bitch Anyway?
That's right.
In Japan, it's a very, very popular album, so we go there every summer for 15 or 20 days doing different performances at different places. Last year, I was told not to go by my doctor, but Marlena paid me all up front, and I wasn't giving any of the money back. I got myself together the best I could. I suffered a little bit. My hand was a bit stiff. Nobody complained. On a lot of the gigs, I was unable to do what I wanted to do. But it's a family. We all love each other. But physically, it was very rough on me. And on the encore, the last night of the final night, my hand went totally numb. And this Chuck, it might have this culminated, I believe, in maybe he suffered a stroke, I believe.
That's true. Yes, he did. And but he didn't miss a year. I think we did 9, maybe 10 years of that every year. No, he didn't miss. Although he did have a stroke, and he evidently worked very hard with his therapist and to get it back together. The first year that he came back, or right after the stroke, it was really rough for him because he couldn't do some of the things that he wanted to do. His hands wouldn't let him do it.
I just want to be clear though, the stroke. So he was already in rehab before this trip to Japan, where his hand was numb.
Yes.
So he had the stroke, and his doctor said, I don't advise you going, but he went anyway. This is the question I have for you, though. The burning desire for Chuck Rainey to play music with people that he loves as a family is on full display to the point where he is numb. His hands are numb. And I was wondering about David T. Walker, a situation where physically you did not know if you could perform, but your calling was so strong that you made it up there and, in fact, played some of the most, was there a time in your career, whether it was back at the Chitlin days or even in the studio, where you overcame physical odds because the burning desire to create on your apparatus was so strong?
Fortunately, I've been blessed not to have experienced that. So firsthand, I don't know what that would be like. Physically, I've always been able to do what I do. So I have no reference for it personally. I've seen others though, like Rainey,
yep,
and other musicians that I've known through the years that have these certain challenges physically because of a stroke or sometimes maybe just because they had too much to drink or smoke or whatever.
How did you deal with people like that? Because Chuck, I asked Chuck, I said, what do you do when you're in the studio with peeps that are totally addicted to drugs and or alcohol, and they're really
right.
And how do you, and you love them and they're suffering. And Chuck basically said to me, he said, you try to work with them the best you can, but I'm just curious about in the studio, especially when you're trying to work together as a unit and somebody's not really dialed in. In the past, could you talk about how, even if you were maybe on any of your albums as a leader or even as an accompanist, how you worked to get that person as dialed in as they possibly could?
Well, even when someone's almost incapacitated, most of the people that I've known or certainly worked with, they can get through those times, that kind of stress put on themselves. And to some degree, they can get around that, especially when they're playing some music or attempting to play some music that they want to play.
Right.
There's a way. I've seen people, that shouldn't have been able to walk out on the stage that I've worked with, that once they get in front of the microphone or their instrument, something else takes over and they're able to perform at a high level, actually. But then they finish and then they fall apart again. I mean, that's the way I've seen it. Of course, there are those other times when somebody just cannot perform. But I haven't seen that very often. I remember working with Little Willie John. It's one of my favorite singers. You have to go back in time to find him. He was always, during the time that I was with him, just about out of it. And somebody, you might have to push him out on the stage is what I was thinking about. And as soon as he got in front of the microphone, it was on.
Wow.
There was no one better. I still to this day do not quite understand that, but I've seen it happen.
Yeah, well, it's like you can just turn it into another gear, or it's just so ingrained and it's so natural that no matter how inebriated or intoxicated or addicted you are on drugs, you just continue to elevate on the bandstand. This is the thing. How did you connect originally with Cannonball Adderley? Because I have a funny feeling that the overarching point is there's a cat that has long left us, but he's deep in my soul. And he was a radio host for a long time and used to actually hold court, I think, at a record shop. And he did some astrology work on one of Cannon's albums called Rick Holmes. Did you know him?
Rick Holmes, yes, sir. I did know him. He also worked for a jazz station here, KBCA at that time. It became KKGO today. That's the call letters. But yes, I knew Rick Holmes. Yeah.
Can you talk about what his leg? Because there's an album that he was on with Cannon where he was going through all the astrology signs, but his voice was so intoxicating and his point of view was so unique. I just wanted you to talk about how he influenced the vibe and the scene, and maybe even if you were the type of cat he would like to have on his show. I mean, did you come on?
Yeah, I was on the show. I've done interviews on his show back in the 60s.
Oh my God, we need those tapes.
Yeah, well, I don't know if there is. I don't know if there is such a thing. But he, of course, it was FM radio at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And so everybody that was on FM radio had just a beautiful voice, lots of resonance, and he was one of those people, and he was into astrology like that, and some other things, some numerology, and maybe a couple of other ologies. but
was he into social?
These were colorful people, colorful people in some colorful times.
Oh, I dig. Did he promote social justice?
That I couldn't speak on.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know.
Right.
But I'm sure he was of that mindset. Yes. Whether he was out there promoting it, I couldn't say. I don't recall that.
I dig. I totally dig. But with Cannon, did you know Cannon from? I mean, the first album you're on with him it says "Happy People."
That's right.
But did you know Cannon before?
Yeah, I before Happy People, he had called me, and it was one of the highlights of my career because it was Cannonball, somebody that had worked with Coltrane and back there in those days with Miles Davis and Coltrane. And so when Cannon called me, he said he was about to set up, or they were setting up for him, a talk show here in L.A.
Wow.
It was in the time slot of Saturday Night Live, before Saturday Night Live. So, and he had a gift for words. You know, he was just great at it. And so everybody knew that. And if you heard him introduce a song from the stage, you would know he was really great at it. He had a love of etymology and meaning and origin of words. And so he called me and wanted me to be in his band, this TV. It was just six people. And he would play a couple of songs at the top of the show. It was 90 minutes, you know, and he would interview after we played a song or two. He would interview whoever was current, race car drivers. It didn't matter, you know. He had a gift for talking to anyone. So, but it only lasted one full season, I guess.
I mean, this is. I just typed into Google Cannonball Adderley talk show,
right?
And it says, but it says Dick Clark interviews Cannonball Adderley on American Bandstand. So I mean, was this was it on local TV? I mean, this is like ridiculous. This is, and he was just interviewing the hottest names in American culture. This is ridiculous.
That's right. Vincent Price, and I don't know whoever was in the news or of any kind of importance in those days. That was he talked to them all.
And so and
then we played a few songs. And,
who was in
and the band played you know, for the between commercials and stuff like that. You know how they do that these days on these talk shows. Same thing.
Sure. Who was part of that group in that band?
Let's see. Oscar Bashir on trumpet.
Oh, my man.
He replaced his Nat for this TV show. John Guerin, I think, played sometimes on drums.
Sure.
And Jim Hewart played bass.
Wow.
And
I've interviewed them all except John Guerin, rest in peace, and Cannon as well.
Yeah, right.
Unbelievable.
And there was a few substitutions, and of course I was there, you know, trying to play the guitar, and just really happy to be there because this was Cannonball Adderley, who had personally called me to ask me to join him. You know, I didn't know that he knew my name, but he had heard about me, he said, and somebody in New Orleans had told him about me the first time.
Really?
Yeah, I don't remember who that was.
And just to put a button.
And then during that time period, we did. That's when the album "Happy People" came about. You know, after the show had. I'm not clear on were we still doing that TV show, but anyway, we did a live album. It was actually in the studio at Capitol Records, the old big room at Capitol Records.
Absolutely.
And Flora Purim and Ayrton on percussion.
Well, I mean, Ayrton said to me in our interview, I interviewed Ayrton in 2011, and we're talking about, you know, you have refugees. The Pope basically said that the new refugee camps in Europe are the equivalent of concentration camps, but you have like Ayrton here with Flora, and against everybody's advice, Cannon sponsored them and got them on their way to citizenship here.
That's right. I remember those days, yeah.
You know, and by the way, what was the name of the show, the Cannonball Adderley show?
I'm sure it was. Because he had John Levy was his manager at that time, who also managed other folks like Nancy Wilson, the singer, and a few other people. Joe Zawinul, I think so he was one of those premier personal managers. John Levy,
John, I was going to say, a cat that I had a chance to interview, and he's left us now, but he was instrumental in on Happy People. What was the genius of David Axelrod?
Oh, he just left us not long ago too.
Yeah, right. He did. Yeah, rest in peace.
Yeah, well, I don't know, but he certainly had a lot of respect. I did another album with him. He was let's see, The Auction, I think it was called, where it was a big band and all kinds of ethereal kind of music.
Yeah, it was called like Earth Rot, maybe.
No, it was called. The name of the album was The Auction, Auction.
The Auction. What is that? And who was the leader?
He is David Axelrod.
Unbelievable.
He arranged the music, and I just happened to play on it, and with him on all the tracks. It was. It's probably something you wouldn't have heard, but it was very interesting musically.
Well, why don't we just marinate on this? I got a track here from it. Let's take a listen to it, and we'll come back and we'll see what you think about it. All right?
All right.
Sale began. Young girls were there. Helpless in their shame, whose cries and sobs laid bare their anguish and their pain.
And saw the little children so unheeded with their bitter cries, while masters traded them for gold.
Music on the Jake Feinberg Show, brought to you by the Jewish Community Center of Southern Arizona, the Jewish Federation of Southern Arizona, Craig Pretzinger of Allstate Insurance, Quavi Kawe of African Diaspora Presents, and Abbott Taylor Jewelers, and we thank them for their support so we can, in a very impromptu fashion, play tunes like that for Mr. David T. Walker. That was the title track on that album called The Auction, and that happened to feature you quite a bit on guitar.
Well, actually, I have to be honest, that's not me on that track.
Who is that?
But there are some others where I am playing out front. But unfortunately, that's not one of them.
That's not one. So maybe we'll try to find.
Well, that's okay.
Yeah. No.
I'm good. I don't remember who that was. I certainly would tell you. I don't recall who was playing guitar there.
Right. this is clearly in reference to the slave auction.
Right. That's right.
And the picture of it on the front has a slave owner with a bunch of slaves being auctioned off. I mean, Rahsaan Roland Kirk had an album called Volunteered Slavery.
Right.
And David T, I wanted you to just put in perspective. A lot of my show is focused on cultural bias and civil rights and social justice. And one reason I pivoted away from pundits and analysts and lawyers is because you just get these talking points and there's nothing really authentic there. And then you actually go back and talk to the cats like Richard Davis, who, literally was clearly head and shoulders above any other bass player in classical orchestras, and he wasn't getting the gigs because he was black. And I guess it's a twofold question. How do you square the circle on cultural bias in this country as it relates to the original sin of this country? And have we made progress? Richard Davis would argue that we could re-litigate or refight the civil rights movement all over again today. And I kind of wanted to ask you your thoughts on that entire thing, the original sin of slavery, cultural bias in parts of our country, and ultimately, have we evolved from a humanistic point of view and a civil rights point of view in 2017?
Yeah, I'll let people like Richard Davis and many others, Cornel West,
yep.
And people that can really speak to that kind of question. I could say a few things, but I'm not as good and as versed as the people that I listen to personally for that kind of thought. So I'll leave that alone.
Well,
for today.
Well,
now, on another day, I might speak on it.
Can I ask you though, when you listen to them, what resonates with you?
Oh, just that they've got the truth. That's it. And then I share that with whoever's around me. You've got to hear this person, what this person is talking about, in these particular words and truths. And then I move on.
Well, so can you point the people in my audience to who they should be listening to for quote unquote truth?
There's Michael Eric Dyson.
I know him very well.
Yeah, and of course I mentioned Cornel West, and there are many others. You don't have to look far. I
guess what I'm trying to say
is, I'll drop those two names on you.
What was the? Could you talk about a situation when you ran into? I mean, I've talked to Mike Knock, who was playing with Yusef Lateef and run out of Colorado because the Klan chased him out. I talked to
right.
I talked to this vibist and tabla player whose parents took him up to see Pete Seeger's Picnic in '52, but it was Paul Robeson was a situation, and the Klan threw rocks through their window and trashed the bus. I mean, I've talked to cats on the Chitlin circuit that you were on, and some of these stories were relatively inspirational. But did you run into cultural bias in your career? If you could share.
Well, yeah. I mean, there were situations during in the 50s and 60s actually, where when we would finish a gig, wherever it was in the South or even in Pennsylvania, as I recall, we would be escorted to the city limits and said, "You must go. I've been knocked on my, not a hotel, but a boarding house room, the door there, and waking up in the middle of the night and asked to leave. Okay, everybody has to go."
Wow.
And they would escort us to the city limits, or we would stop at a gas station and could not use the restrooms, of course, and things like that. So that was pretty common. I caught the end of that, actually. And even in Pennsylvania, Chester, Pennsylvania comes to mind. We were, and I think that's north, isn't it?
Say,
No, I was joking. It is, of course, up north, but we weren't allowed to drink out of the water fountains in some universities or colleges. Even that was the water fountain was on the stage or backstage.
What do
back in the days of my working with the Olympics and Hank Ballard and the Midnighters, you know. So yeah, I've been through those kinds of things. A lot of them.
Did you just look at it as? I mean, it's kind of, you know, I think that there was Ken Burns did a series on the Civil War,
right.
And at the end of it, a woman is saying the Civil War may not be over yet, in the sense that it could be fought again. And
well, from what's going on today, this week,
I mean,
that's true.
You know, if you look at it, it's like you look at the serious supremacists that were going, the real white supremacy and segregation in the 50s that you caught in the early 60s, and then the generation that moved into heavy civil rights, which was like 60s and 70s. Well, now you have that. It seems to me like there's parts of this country that, you know, where they want to keep intact their own view of history, and as a result, they, you know, this is we're almost going through it again. I mean, we're almost in a different kind of fashion. And I mean, like you were ordered to leave a boarding house. I know, like Lee Charlton, the drummer, was in a band with Ellis Marsalis, who I'm sure you've crossed paths with.
Right.
And so that was a mixed race band, and they were driving through Texas, and they had to drive Ellis to the black neighborhood to drop him off there. He couldn't stay in the hotel in the white neighborhood. So,
yeah, well, that's why we were in boarding houses when we came through the South a lot, or just kept driving on until we got up north or back to New York or wherever.
Because you know what it is? It's like you were ordered to leave, but you weren't murdered. You weren't killed.
No, that's true.
And I think,
although we've been taken to jail a few times, not fortunately never went into a cell, but you know, stop on the highway and was asked the question, "What are you doing here?" And if one of the members had some kind of diamond ring on, or some kind of stone, and then that the sheriff could take, you know, and then let us go.
Wow.
So things like that would happen, yeah, of course. So, but we took it in stride, you know, and fortunately, the people that I was traveling with were all very young, so there was no fear. I don't know exactly why, but, you know, there was no fear coming from us. We would stop and wherever we wanted to, and if there was enough of us trying to go to the white-only restroom, we would go. But only if there was only one person there, you know, we would take advantage. And then we'd jump back in the vehicle, whatever it was, the van or whatever, and hightail it out of there.
Yeah, I mean, Mike Knock was saying that when they showed up in this town, the car broke down. Yusef got out of the car. Johnny Coles was the trumpet player, but he had this sort of interesting skin condition, so he looked kind of strange. And then there was like James Black, the drummer from New Orleans. So they were like, as it got later in the day, the part was not going to be able to come into from San Francisco. It started to snow, and pretty soon all these cats in the town were just staring at them. And Mike was like, nobody's going to let us stay in here. And Yusef basically was like, let's get in this car and get the heck out. And so they somehow the car could still drive, and they were chased out of town. And you know, I don't know.
I know about that.
Yeah. I mean, it's a little bit hard. I guess when you look back on that time, the inspiration to keep going was what? Fill in the blank. I mean, not that you would quit and walk away from it, but what was the churning desire to... like, why did you want to keep doing that? You know, like go with do the Chitlin circuit. I mean, before you got real stable in California,
Right.
it would seem to me to be at the very least just a dangerous part. You know, you're playing with your life at that point. You don't know what's going to happen.
Well, you know how young folks are, and I was once upon a time one of them, and so there was no fear. No, you know, when you're young, sometimes there's no fear of death. That's just
You're 100% right. 100% right about that.
just doesn't come into the picture. So, and then the love of the art form, music. You know, we were learning things, we were doing things, we were experiencing some music, and so that kept us going. It certainly wasn't monetarily beneficial, just enough to get to the next city.
Seems to me.
Yeah.
It seems to me, though, that one of the things you could correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the things that that led to this a lot of progress in civil rights was not just the protest groups, but it was the music as well. There was a component, not just the folk music of the protest of the war or anything like that, but I mean, like, there were musical, Black Panther rallies would have music. There would be music attached to social justice components to it. And you look at Black Lives Matter today or other groups, what's really lacking is the soul. I mean, there's people there protesting, but you don't have instrumental music that speaks to love, Marvin Gaye, Curtis Mayfield. You know, the messages those guys were channeling, they weren't necessarily out there making a political statement, but you put those kinds of messages in the music with protest, and it's going to turn people's emotions around. I mean, do you find that one of the reasons that these movements have a little bit of a harder time getting traction is because of the lack of melodic improvisation because of music?
Well, that could very well be. I haven't spent much time thinking on that, but
I'm sorry.
I do know that when we were traveling in those days, you know, I wish I had some of those recordings, the music that we played during after we got to a place, or if we were, should I say, annoyed by some situation. You know, the things that we played were just outrageous. I mean, we just it was musically, I don't know what it was, but we would experience some kind of awakening right there on the stage, and sometimes a lot of anger in the music, you know, or maybe frustration.
That's interesting.
We played it. We played what we were living.
Right, and instead of I mean, what you see now with, I mean, I'm just speaking about, younger cats who, you channeled that anger into emotional, pulsating music, and you weren't you weren't going to Walmart and buying a semi-automatic weapon that belonged in Afghanistan. You know, that's what I mean.
No.
You know, people were trying. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to be Pollyannish about it, and I realized that we were not fully interconnected. And I think that, I talked to Mtume about it, and that's the thing that's a little bit galling to me is that, he's like, dude, even with film footage now, you can have footage. You can have film. I mean, before the Klan, peeps would disappear. You wouldn't ever hear from them again. You wouldn't know what happened. They were gone, okay? Now, you have dash cam videos of black men being murdered for no reason, and you have white police officers, they get fired, but justice is not served. So you can even have film, TV, visual footage, and justice is there. It's not equal justice under the law. And for some reason, that still doesn't seem to resonate with a large section of white America. And it's just humbling for me at 39 to really realize that this has been going on for a long time, and we're probably living through another iteration of it. And it's kind of, I just was, I'm not looking for words of wisdom. I'm just looking to say, is the hang up just the fact that people don't really want to accept the fact that the original sin of this country is slavery?
Well, yeah, you could phrase it and put it in a lot lot of different sentences, and that one will do for now. What you just said.
Dude, you are a great politician.
Well, you don't have to be down south. I mean, to go through those kinds of things. We went through them on Sunset Boulevard here in the late '50s, working in some of the clubs over on Sunset. Now, don't come out of the dressing room. Those kind of things. Stay back here.
Right, exactly. No, I mean it's just it's every. I mean, even the Pete Seeger concert was a revelation. Just the mere fact that the police disappeared, the bus drivers ran away. It was a Paul Robeson concert, and up in Peekskill, New York.
Right.
But they're everywhere.
Right.
But
Yeah.
I'm pivot out of here. This is something Rainey told me the other day, and I want you to think about how it relates to the guitar and any wisdom that you got as it relates to the way the notes should sound. He said, now Rainey never played the upright bass. Obviously, he said Charles Mingus pulled me to the side one time, and we had been playing a tune called "Sweet and Lovely." He said the bass notes should be round and long. If you play them real long, it supports the sound of the ballad. I was playing the notes too short, which is what a lot of electric players do when they're playing popular ballads or playing jazz. Okay, so, and I've heard that from all, with bass players, you want to make the notes round. From the point of view of a rhythm guitar player in an electric setting, when you're fusing soul, R&B, jazz, and rock all together, what is the kind of shape of the note that guitar players should be making? Or did you have somebody come along and say, the note should be this way? Because the bass players over and over, it's always about making the notes round. And I'm curious what the shape of the notes for a guitar player should be.
Well, for me, I learned somehow at an early age and figured out that from listening to others and then myself, that the most important thing that I think that I had was my touch. And so my touch involves all of what you just said. But I instead of learning a song or practicing scales,
right,
I would just play a note in the way that I attacked it and stayed on it or let it go was how I developed my touch. And I think that's what I'm known for as much as anything else is my touch. And it's a soft touch, actually. And so to speak on it any more technical than that, I can't do it for you.
Did you, some people would say that the most rewarding thing is developing those calluses and the bleeding of the fingers. And did you develop?
Well, I did a little of that, but that wasn't the way that I played or touched or attacked the strings. No, I didn't. I had some calluses, yes, in the beginning because I would, during the days when I would practice all day long and all night, if I wasn't playing a gig, that will happen. Calluses.
No, I want you to square this because it's so important. You have your own sound, and of course, I botched the David Axelrod tune. I'm sorry about that, but
that's okay. That's okay.
But how do you attack the guitar with a light touch? Explain that to the peeps.
Well, from both hands, not only the left hand that actually touches the string. In my case, since I'm right-handed and I use a pick, it's the way that I touch the string with my left hand, and also the way I attack it when I do pick it or grab it and pop it, actually, with my right hand. It's a combination of both my hands in sync, of course, and the way my heart works. I can feel those vibrations and tensions, and I know, okay, that's it. Other than that, I can't explain it. Look. Yeah. I'm not one of those people that has done a lot of technical studying. I am self-taught.
Sure.
So therefore, I miss some of that formal things that people talk about. I don't know much about that between me and you.
And the world, and the world, and the world of jig.
Right,
No, but
right.
I mean, what's your take? I mean, I gather that academia is a good scene for peeps, for a lot of cats. They,
Well, it's important, and I would suggest to any young person to do that, incorporate that, use that, go there and get some of that for sure. You know, academia is very important. You know that all that good stuff that comes from the school or from having a teacher. That's good stuff, and I would suggest that and do to anyone that's beginning or wanting to learn more.
Do you? I know Marlena retired last year, but do you still get a chance to play with her, or can you talk a little bit about any gigs with the with that you have? I honestly I feel the next time that I want to talk to you, I want to meet you in person. I just was curious about anything coming up on the horizon as far as a gig for the self-taught band street scholar David T. Walker.
Well, thank you, sir.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, thank you. No,
Sure.
I talked to Marlena, but I've never, other than on that recording, a few recordings of records back in those days, including "Who Is This Bitch Anyway," and a couple of others. But I did work one gig with her in the marina here in L.A. Years ago, just one night. I talk with her sometimes on the phone, and she has a great sense of humor. So even when we email one another, there's laughter going on. But I don't think I'll be doing anything with her soon.
Well, no, I guess so. That's really cool. But then, just in general, what do you have on your calendars? I mean, are you playing any gigs?
Well, I'm going to go into rehearsals pretty soon. I'm going to go to Japan in a few months and take my quartet, and we're going to make some joyful noises.
Now, who's in that quartet?
Ndugu Chancellor on drums, Byron Miller bass this time, and I had to replace Clarence McDonald, was playing keyboards for the last 5 or 6 years, but he is unable to travel at this time, so I have Jeff Colella on keyboards and piano.
You know what's great is that I was just out in L.A., in between these two interviews we did. I was out in L.A. and I did a Facebook Live interview with Ndugu at a Pete's Coffee, and he was telling me about playing with Alice Coltrane in the set, and then Sun Ra in the back set. But he also talked very much about, and we're talking about these street scholar things, but he said there is a huge divide with these cats that are coming in to USC from in academia, and their unwillingness to play with the cats that have rubber bands on their horns and that are not, and it's like, so that's, and then also on the same trip on the way home, I drove to Vegas and wound up hanging out with Clarence McDonald, which in itself was an absolutely mind-blowing experience. But
there is a colorful person right there.
I'm talking
and knowledgeable.
I mean, listen. I got a degree just hanging out with him in that day because he did have some pretty authoritative answers for a lot of questions that have been vexing for me for a long time. But
yes, and
yeah,
I'm sorry.
No, I mean, just he's an inspirational character. So you're going to go to Japan, and you're going to be in the studio as well. Did I hear that correctly?
No, I'll be playing live.
And you'll be there for about a month or so, or 3 weeks?
A couple of weeks, I guess.
Okay.
Everything is not fixed. So I guess I shouldn't have spoken on that because unless something is fixed and set, I usually don't speak on it. I forgot we were on the radio.
Or it's all good whether it happens or not. Do you have a plan to play original tunes, or is it going to be?
Well, of course. I've done some albums. The last 3 albums I did, which Clarence is playing on actually. They're reissuing and releasing November best of, So from those 3 albums, there's going to be some songs that were on those 3 albums released in a best of CD.
Well,
so yes, I will always play some original music, but I have to play some other things too.
What like they talked about. Like with who is this bitch anyway? That it's such a popular album in Japan. Is there a David?
Yes,
is there a David T. Walker album? I mean, the Japanese are fanatical. Is there a David T. Walker album that they are fixated on?
Not that I'm aware of like that, but whatever it is okay. Like from the beginning, back in the days of the '60s, for me, the Sidewalk or. There's a self-titled album from the early 70s, which people are always asking me about, or when before the CDs became very popular, there was, if you found a vinyl record of mine, it would cost you. In Japan, it was very expensive, and still is, I guess.
Dude, it's like, I mean, you have Sidewalk, you have Going Up, you have you have Plum Happy. I've never even seen that album.
Yeah, I don't know why that one was so popular, but for some reason, because of this music, what do they call this? Acid rock or something?
It was good. Acid jazz, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't know it was that, but I guess maybe.
No, I mean
so.
it really was. Well, we can get into that another. David T. I have. It's always great to glean information from you, and you're very cagey about certain things, and I applaud that. But I love if things do get off the ground with Japan, I hope you guys have a ball, and I'll send you.
We will,
and we'll reconnect. After that, maybe do another interview.
Okay. Well, now I go there in all kind of configurations with Marlena, or there's some Japanese artists that I work with, and sometimes I do my own music, which is what's going to happen this time. But thank you very much, sir.
All right, David T. I'll talk to you soon, my man.
Okay.
Later on.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.